Tanking is the most strategic role in Marvel Rivals. You need to understand how to spend and gain health, damage, and space, all of which exchange for one another. Every tank in the game has a different relationship to this economy of these three resources, and the way I see it, there are 4 subcategories in each tank role. By understanding these archetypes, you will be able to counterpick not just the enemy tank, but the entire enemy team more effectively. And that's what I want to show you today. I will break down each tank archetype and discuss each tank's unique blend of those archetypes to help you win more games or just have more fun. If this isn't your first time with this tank archetype video, you may be interested in seeing where patches have moved some heroes around. Let's start with each of the core of many teams' compositions. Anchors, the backbone of many teams' staying power. This is the main type category that fills the most traditional role as a tank, as it's the best at protecting an entire squad, regardless of that squad's archetypes. This means you'll likely need at least one in most scenarios, unless you fully commit to a double flex tank, which we will of course discuss in just a bit. This archetype has a slow and consistent way of taking and yielding space, but one key difference with this version versus the last version of tank archetyping is damage. Rivals has made it clear that they want their tanks to consistently deal about 80 points of damage per second. Some tanks have ways of getting bigger and more burst, but most tanks on average sit around this mark. So for some key points of anchor tanks you're going to see is that they have sustain via shields and barriers, 650 or so with their health range, utility based abilities, long range, low mobility, sustained damage, and damage negation ults. They're best against poke type characters or range type characters, and they're generally weak to brawl or melee type characters. Next is brawl, the flex type, the more mobile and damage focused tank type. This archetype offers little in the way of true protection against the enemy, outside of course pulling aggro and squashing threats. This is the first flex category, meaning that it takes a team's full commitment to this archetype to function against more competent teams. This archetype has the most rapid interaction with creating, maintaining, and losing space. It has sustain via temporary health or bonus health at blue health. It has health generally in the range of the 700s, burst mobility for their abilities, close range, moderate mobility overall, sustained damage, and stunning ults, and they're best against dive, but they're generally weak to poke. Next is yet another of the flex category. This is the dives. This tank type is focused around pure disruption and distraction. This is yet another of that flex archetype, so once again, potentially leaving your team vulnerable to attacks unless they themselves have tools to escape or sustain of their own. The trade-off being that you become a threat to the enemy's own backline, requiring teams to practically full focus you due to your massively artificially inflated health pool. This archetype struggles to hold space, but does do a great job of making it. It gets sustained via big burst tanking. Its health generally rests within the 750 range, burst damage abilities, medium range, high mobility, burst damage types overall, and they're best against supports, which is a special case. They're really good against supports, and they're specifically weak to brawl type characters, again, especially tanks. Next are the bunker tanks. This is the newest archetype added to the tank category, which focuses on holding ground and benefits most from letting enemies come to them with dangerous burst damage traps ready to support this idea. While this archetype can't protect quite as well as anchors, they are the only other archetype to offer barriers, which the rest of the team can use. This category is superb at holding space, but struggles greatly in making it. They have sustain via pre-placed objects. Their health tends to be higher in the 800s range. They have burst damage abilities, long range, low overall mobility, burst damage, damage setups for their ults, and they're best against brawl and weak to both sustain and poke. This one is another special case, as they don't do too well against supports overall, as supports don't generally need to interact with them. Now that we've covered all of the archetypes, let's go into each of the tanks individually, starting with Captain America. Captain America, after very much debate with the rest of my crew, which, by the way, if you're interested in joining into our discussions where I will go back and forth with you and probably be very stubborn, join us on Patreon, and then of course join us on Discord. For anybody who's at our tier 2 can join us for our community discussions. Captain America has a support-like ult that's coupled with a really selfish shield, as well as a 25-meter range ranged attack that grants you requires his melees in order to get wound up. This gives him a unique blend of the mobility and staying power, which gives him that beautiful mix between an 80% dive and a 20% brawl. And Captain America has a true difficulty of 4, which true difficulty just means how hard the character is to play once you actually understand the kit and everyone's kind of on the same playing field in terms of their time spent in the game. One of his greatest strengths is that he is entirely self-sufficient as a diver, but his greatest weakness is that he has low damage. Next is Doctor Strange, who is an 80-20 anchor brawl with a true difficulty of 2. Strange is an anchor tank that wants to close the gap like a brawl tank and has 2 abilities to help him do this, and 1 ability that benefits from it directly, albeit these are somewhat niche. His ult is also incredibly brawl coded. This makes him one of the most versatile tanks in the game. Of course, that being his greatest strength, but his greatest weakness is that he is entirely reliant on his barrier to survive, as he has no other way of keeping himself sustained outside of holding up his shield. For number 3, we have Emma Frost, who is a 50-50 brawl and bunker with a true difficulty of 2. This unique blend of archetypes does to her what Poke and Brawl did to Winter Soldier. Her playstyle ends up being somewhat closer to an anchor tank in most cases, but her ability to set up traps and to shut down targets in close range cannot be understated. She's both good as and against Brawl once in close quarters, but her greatest weakness is that she has lower mobility overall despite having Brawl in her DNA, and has strict range requirements despite being a bunker. Groot is 100% a bunker with a true difficulty of 3. This again took a lot of debate, as I have a Groot main who is very adamant that he could be a brawl, and after that discussion, I'm not entirely certain that Groot isn't at least partially anchor, which we don't have a representation of both an anchor and a bunker at the same time. As time has gone on, it has become clear that Groot is the best representation of pure bunker we have in the game, yes, even over Penny. His assessment of brawl typing has slowly declined over time, where we started him out more as a 50-50, and now as the true DNA of Brawl has become more clear with changes to characters like The Thing, Thor, and Emma, of which Groot did not partake of, makes him, like I said, even clearer as a bunker tank. Where he struggles as a pure bunker is in his passive damage, like Penny, but his lack of mobility, higher health, and damage setup ults sets him clearly in this category. It's possible that there's an overlap here with Anchor, so let me know in the comments if you think that he might have more Anchor in him than I may be giving him credit for here. His best strength is that he has good damage and high health. Just out the gate comes out strong, but he really struggles with moving from team fight to team fight despite his walls being placeable. Hulk is an 80-20 dive and brawl with a true difficulty of 3. Hulk is simply hard to kill and proud of it. Hulk takes the sustained elements of both archetypes of dive and brawl and trades his access to range for them while snagging some incredible mobility along the way. His greatest strength is his good mix of stuns, sustain, and mobility, but his greatest weakness is that he is highly reliant on abilities for any real damage, as most of the time you're just going to end up holding the trigger and not doing a whole lot. At number 6 is the king of anchor tanks himself, Magneto, with a true difficulty of 3. There is no timeline or patch in which Magneto yields his title as the best main tank in the game. He is the best long-term team-focused survivability in the game and an absolutely S-tier ult. However, he has awful mobility and is very reliant on his good timing in order to make use of his shields. Penny Parker is an 80-20 bunker and dive with a true difficulty of 4. We debated putting her in the partial dive category in the last version of this video and decided against it due to simply how reliant she is on her mines. However, upon deeper investigation, her abilities are much more mobile than the typically sluggish bunkers, and her ult plays almost exactly like a dive tank's would, with a bunker tank twist added on top. She has the best in-game area control and burst damage, as well as having unique access to self-sustain, not overhealth, healing, which none of the other tanks currently can boast. However, her greatest weakness is that she completely lacks any shielding despite being primarily a bunker tank, which makes her a bit of a target for range damage quite often. At number 8 is the Thing, who is 100% a brawl with a true difficulty of 1. There is a temptation to place the Thing into the dive category due to his mobility, especially with the new team up that is being added with the Human Torch. The problem with that mindset is that Rivals is making it really clear they want their brawl tanks to be mobile. The Thing is definitely mobile, but not as mobile as somebody like Hulk or Cap or of course upcoming Venom. He also completely lacks any other range options, like literally none, which the other dive tanks at least have some access to. He has well-rounded close-range tools and anti-flyer options for his greatest strengths, and his weakness is that he, like mentioned, has absolutely no range options. He's all hands. Next is Thor, with an 80-20 brawl and dive with a true difficulty of 3. Thor has slowly been moved into the dive category, mostly due to his range options just being so prevalent on him. He struggles to perform well as either a brawl or a dive tank because all of his tools are focused on high damage, which makes him really struggle as a tank and more as a DPS character. Of course, this is his greatest strength with his high damage, but his greatest weakness is that he doesn't have high enough mobility or range to make up for his lack of sustain. And rounding out our list, we have Venom, who is 100%, to no one's surprise, a dive with a true difficulty of 5, which I think is kind of funny because the game considers him a 1-star difficulty, but once you get to the higher ranks, Venom can really struggle if you don't know what you're doing. Venom wants to make his presence the enemy backline's problem, and who needs a team anyway if the enemy team themselves are dead? The second highest mobility in the game, of course, next to Spider-Man, with extremely high burst sustain. He's a bit easy to box out overall due to his overall low-ish damage and heavy requirement on his aim in order to get that damage to work. So that is my list. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments, and don't be shy with leaving a sub or a like, as it helps us out a lot and make more videos in the future. Bless your faces and deuces.